Hi everyone, today we're going to be looking at something called conditional statements, which is going to kind of further continue our little logic portion of this chapter that we've been looking at for the last couple of days. So first thing I want to start off with is with this statement right here, just kind of fill in some things with you. It says here, the above statements are example of conditional statements. A conditional statement can be written in the form of if P, then Q. Or simply, we can look at it as if P then Q, where P represents the hypothesis. You might remember that from science class. And Q represents the conclusion. Notice that the words if and then are not included in either. Read through the statements above. We're then going to underline the hypothesis and then circle the conclusion in each statement. Well, the hypothesis is going to be the subject here. So if we're looking at this first sentence right above, right here, it says, if you take notes in class, that's referring to as the hypothesis or the subject. Then you will understand how to do your homework. That's the conclusion of what happens when you take notes in class. So let's take a look at the next one. It says, if you understand how to do your homework, then the conclusion, you will do well in the quiz. So hypothesis, if you do well in the quiz, then the conclusion is that you will pass the class. Last one here. If subject, you pass the class, which is the hypothesis again, then you will take Algebra 2 next year, or the conclusion. So let's continue on. Let's take a look at some different things that we're going to do with this. So you see here now, it says not all conditional statements are going to be written in if-then format. So sometimes we need to kind of change things around or change a sentence into that form to be able to identify the hypothesis and the conclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, please note here. I'm going to circle it like 12 times. Use proper English, please. We're not going to be looking at any thugonomics here. We're not going to be looking at what TI is saying or any of the cool lingo that is of today. Please use proper English. Now, with that being said, let's get into some examples here. So, first example says, rewrite each statement in an if-then form, and then I want you to underline the hypothesis and circle the conclusion. So for number one here, it says a car has 4 wheels. Well, what is a car? Well, it's a vehicle, right? So we're going to write it this way. If a vehicle is a car, comma, then, then it has 4 wheels. Notice again, we're talking about the car. Well, what's the car? That is the subject. So that's going to be part of your hypothesis. Vehicle is a car. Has 4 wheels. Well, that's the conclusion. If it's a car, then it has to have 4 wheels. So there's that first one. Let's try a couple more so we can get the hang of this a little bit more. So number 2, the 4th of July is a holiday. Well, let's figure out what is the subject here. Well, that's the 4th of July. So we could say, if it is the 4th of July, then what's the hypothesis? Well, the hypothesis, or excuse me, what is the conclusion? Well, then it has to be a holiday. So that's how we're going to finish this off. Then it's a holiday. Hooray! So again, your hypothesis here is that it's the 4th of July. That's the subject. So then your conclusion, well, if it is the 4th of July, then it has to be a holiday, or your conclusion. Number 3 here. It says the midpoint of M is the midpoint M of a segment bisects the segment. Okay, let's give this a shot here, shall we? The midpoint M of a segment right there. Midpoint. That seems to be like what our subject is, or our hypothesis. So let's start there. If M is the midpoint, comma, then the conclusion here has to be, well, what is this segment doing? Or what is that M doing? It is bisecting that segment. So that's what we're going to write. Then it bisects. Whoa, I can't spell today. Then it bisects the segment. So again, M is the midpoint. That's your hypothesis. Your conclusion being that it bisects the segment. Give number 4 a shot on your own then for Monday or for your next day. That is something that I want you to try. Don't go too crazy with it. I know this is something new and something that you're probably not crazy used to, but just give it the best shot and we'll see how it turns out. Moving on then. Here's some things that I want you to try on your own. We'll do the first 2 together, and then I want you to do the next 2 here. So it says underline the hypothesis and then circle the conclusion in each statement. So again, what is your hypothesis for the first one? We have, if you take the bus, then you live far from school. Well, what's the subject here? You taking the bus. It's you taking the bus. That's a hypothesis. And if you take the bus, then that means that you can't live next to school, or you live far from school, being the conclusion here. Number 2, if you drive the speed limit, then you will not get a speeding ticket. Well, what's the hypothesis? Well, if you drive the speed limit, then what should not happen if you drive the speed limit? Well, you should not, or you will not get a speeding ticket, or the conclusion. Again, give number 3, number 4 a try, and we'll see how those go in class then. Now, last but not least here, got a few statements here as well. I want to rewrite these as in if-then form. Again, proper English here, ladies and gentlemen. And then again, underline hypothesis, and let's then circle the conclusion. So number 5, we have 16-year-olds may get their driver's license. Well, what can we write here? Well, I look at it as if you are 16, then you may get your license. Again, your hypothesis. You are 16. Well, what happens when you're 16? You are then allowed to then get your license, or the conclusion here. Let's look at number 6 now. Number 6 here says baseball players hit home runs. Well, who's the subject here? Well, we're talking about baseball players. So if you're a baseball player, then what should happen? Well, if you're a baseball player, you should be able to hit home runs. So that's your hypothesis that we're looking at. So if you're a baseball player, then you hit home runs. Just like this little fellow right there. He looks like a baseball player. So again, your hypothesis. You're a baseball player. Well, what happens if you're a baseball player? Well, then you better be hitting some home runs then, right? Great. Let's try this last one, maybe number 7, and then I'm going to have you come to class again with number 8 done. So here we go. Runners drink Gatorade. Okay? So, who's the subject here? Who are we talking about? Well, we're talking about runners. What about those runners? Well, they drink Gatorade. So let's try to put that in, again, in an if-then statement. Well, if you're a runner, then what should you be doing? Well, then you drink Gatorade. Again, what's your hypothesis? That runners have to then drink Gatorade. All right, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, I want you to give number 8 a try. Just give it your best shot. Again, I know this is a little bit different than things that you're used to, but the practice here is obviously going to make things more perfect. We'll continue looking at more of this stuff then tomorrow, and we'll make sure that you're brushed up and you're doing well with this. But do please give these a try, do the best that you can, and we'll take a look then tomorrow with it. All right, nice job today. Make sure that you bring this into class to tomorrow so we can check it out and have everything done so we can give you credit for it. All right, everyone. Thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.